The night was quiet in the outer colony. Only the cold wind moved across the endless scrap dump. Mountains of broken machines, old ship parts, and rusted metal stretched far under the moonlight. A man named Rylan walked through the junk. He was a salvager. He spent his life searching for useful parts in the trash of the old wars. Most nights he found nothing but rust. Sometimes he found something worth selling. Tonight, he hoped for luck. His flashlight cut across the piles of steel. The air smelled of smoke and oil. He heard the groan of shifting metal as he climbed higher. In the distance, the old city lights glowed faint, but here it was dark and silent. Then he stopped. He thought he heard a sound. Not metal, not wind. A different sound. It was soft, weak, almost like a cry. Rylan froze. His hand tightened on the iron bar he carried for defense. Out here, scavengers or wild dogs could be dangerous. He listened again. Yes, there it was. A voice, weak and broken, coming from under a pile of crushed panels. He pushed the scraps aside. Dust rose in the air, and then he saw her. It was not a human. Lying half buried in the junk was a young alien. Her skin was pale silver with faint blue lines that glowed faintly. Her eyes, half open, reflected the light like glass. She looked no older than a human teenager. Rylan's breath caught. Everyone knew aliens were enemies. They had attacked colonies before. They were feared and hated. If the patrols found her, they would kill her on sight. She whispered something in a strange tongue. Her voice cracked. She tried to move but failed. Her body was covered with cuts. Her clothes were torn. Some looked like burned armor. She was almost gone. Rylan stood frozen. His mind raced. If he helped her, he could be branded a traitor. If he left her, she would die in the junk. No one would ever know, but his heart would know, the alien. And girl looked at him with desperate eyes. There was no hate in them, only fear and a silent plea. For a moment, she looked more human than alien, just a child lost and broken. Rylan cursed under his breath. He dropped his iron bar and pulled the metal off her body. She gasped in pain but did not cry out. With effort, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body trembling. As he carried her, his mind screamed at him. This was madness. If the patrol saw him, he would be arrested. If anyone found out, he could lose everything. But something in him refused to leave her behind. He made his way back across the junkyard. Each step heavy, the night seemed darker. Every shadow looked like an enemy. His eyes kept scanning the sky, because high above, unseen engines hummed. Strange lights flickered between the clouds. He had seen those lights before. He knew what they meant. Alien hunters were still searching, and now he carried their lost prey in his arms. At the gate of his small shack, he paused. The girl stirred weakly, whispering again in words he did not understand. Her hand gripped his shirt for a moment, then went still. Rylan opened the door, stepping inside. He laid her on his old bed. His hands shook as he covered her with a blanket. He looked at her face, peaceful now but fragile. Outside, the wind howled through the scrap dump, but louder than the wind was the sound that made his blood run cold. Engines coming closer, Rylan whispered to himself. What have I done? The engines faded into the distance, but Rylan did not sleep that night. He sat by the window of his shack, staring into the darkness of the scrap dump. His hands rested on the old rifle by his chair. He kept listening for footsteps, for voices, for anything that might mean danger. On the bed behind him, the alien girl breathed softly, her face pale, her silver skin glowing faint under the lantern light. Rylan had bandaged her wounds with strips of cloth. He had given her a little water. She was still weak, but alive. He rubbed his eyes, wondering what kind of madness he had walked into. A human hiding an alien. It was unthinkable. If the colony patrols found out, he could be jailed, even executed. And yet, when he looked at her, she did not look like an enemy. She looked like a lost child. Morning came, the junkyard filled with the cries of other scavengers searching for metal. Rylan went outside, pretending all was normal. He picked up a few scrap pieces, his mind heavy. He noticed 2 patrol soldiers walking nearby, their uniforms dusty, their rifles ready. Any reports of alien movement? One soldier asked the other. Not yet, the second said, but command says survivors may be hiding near the old dump. If you see anything, you know what to do. Rylan's heart pounded. He bent his head, pretending to work. The soldiers passed without looking at him. Only when they were gone did he breathe again. He hurried back to the shack. When he opened the door, he stopped. The girl was standing, weak and unsteady, but awake. She looked around the small room with wide eyes. Her silver skin shimmered under the sun through the window. She touched the wooden table as if it was a strange treasure. Rylan closed the door quickly. You shouldn't be up, he said firmly. though he knew she did not understand. The girl turned to him. She said something in her language, the word. Dis is soft and musical. He shook his head. I don't know what you're saying. She frowned, then pointed at herself. Alira, she said slowly. Her voice cracked but clear enough. Rylan blinked. Lyra, he repeated. She nodded, then pointed at him. Rylan, he said. She smiled weakly. It was the first time he had seen her smile, and for some reason it unsettled him. For the next few days, Rylan kept her hidden. He gave her food in small amounts, taught her simple words. Water, food, sleep, danger. She learned quickly, faster than he expected. Soon she could form broken sentences. Her eyes brightened whenever she understood a new word, but danger was always near. At night, patrol vehicles moved across the dump, searching with floodlights. Sometimes strange shadows passed in the sky, alien drones still hunting. Rylan kept the windows dark. He told himself he should let her go, but every time he saw her fragile form, he could not. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, there was a knock on the door. Rylan froze. His hand gripped the rifle. Alira sat up, her eyes wide with fear. The knock came again, louder. Rylan, you there? A voice called. It was old Merrick, another scavenger. Heard some noises by your shack last night. Everything all right? Rylan forced his voice steady. Yeah, just the wind, he said. Nothing else. Merrick chuckled outside. Strange winds these days. His footsteps crunched as he walked away, but Rylan knew Merrick was suspicious. The man had sharp eyes and sharp greed. Inside, Alira whispered, Danger. Her broken human word cut the silence. Rylan turned to her, shocked. She understood more than he thought. That night, as Rylan sat by the window again, he knew things could not stay this way. Alira was healing, but every day the risk grew. Patrols were closing in. Neighbors were asking questions. The junkyard was no longer safe. And yet, when he looked at her sleeping peacefully on his bed, he felt a strange pull in his chest. She was no longer just a hidden guest. She was becoming something more. Something he could not explain. Outside, the floodlights swept across the horizon again. Shadows moved in the sky. The hunters were still searching, and soon they would come too close. Days turned into weeks, and the hidden guest was no longer just a wounded stranger. She was becoming part of Rylan's small world. Her name was Alira, and each sunrise she grew stronger. Rylan taught her simple human words. He would point to objects in his shack. Water, bread, chair, sky, and she would repeat them slowly. Her voice carried an odd melody, as if every word was sung. At first her sentences were broken, but soon she was speaking with more clarity. Water, please, she said one morning, holding out the empty cup. Her silver eyes glowed with quiet pride. Rylan nodded and gave her more, hiding his own surprise. She was learning far faster than any human child could. But it was not only she who learned. Alira showed him small pieces of alien knowledge. She tinkered with scraps from the junkyard, her thin fingers moving with care. She touched a broken circuit and it sparked back to life. She traced glowing lines on metal and it hummed as if remembering its old power. Rylan stared. How did you? But she only smiled and said, Fix. Her broken human words could not explain everything, yet her actions spoke louder. At night, she drew symbols on the dusty floor, strange curves and glowing marks. Rylan guessed they were from her people's language. Sometimes she hummed songs in that tongue, soft and haunting, filling the shack with a sense of distant stars. For the first time in years, Rylan felt his lonely shack alive, yet danger pressed closer each day. The patrols doubled their searches. News from the colony said alien survivors were still hiding. Any who helped them would face death. One afternoon, while Rylan repaired a broken drone, Alira sat beside him, watching. Shaw. He pointed to the engine part. Not good, she said. She placed her hand over it, and the part vibrated, steady and smooth. The machine came to life. Rylan jumped back, staring. She tilted her head with a small smile. Better now, she whispered. That night, he asked, Why are they hunting you? Alira lowered her gaze. Her fingers traced the blanket. I escape, she said. They want me back. Rylan felt a chill. He wanted to ask more, but her eyes were full of fear. He knew the answer was darker than her words allowed. The bond between them grew. He found himself speaking more, telling her stories of the colony, of the old wars, of his lost family. She listened with silent eyes. Sometimes she touched his arm gently, a comfort without words, but danger came sooner than he expected. One evening, while Rylan and Elira worked on a small device built from scrap, a red light blinked. It was faint, almost invisible, but Elira stiffened. Her eyes widened. "Signal," she whispered. "They find." Rylan snatched the device, smashing it with a hammer, but the fear in her voice chilled him. Someone, somewhere, had heard. That same night, as the two sat in silence, heavy footsteps echoed outside. Rylan reached for his rifle. His heart raced. He peered through the cracks of the wooden door. Merrick, the scavenger, was standing there again. His lantern light swung across the ground. He studied the shack with sharp eyes, his voice low but clear. "I know you're hiding something, Rylan." Rylan's breath froze. Elira sat behind him, silent as stone, her eyes fixed on the door. Merrick tapped the wall of the shack. "Don't worry, I'm not a soldier. But secrets pay well, Rylan, and I like to be paid." He walked away into the dark, his laugh echoing across the junk. Inside, Elira whispered, "Danger," again, her voice shaking. Rylan closed his eyes. He knew she was right. The girl he had saved was no longer just a guest. She was his responsibility, his secret, his greatest risk. And soon, because of her, his quiet life would explode into something far greater. The days stretched longer, and the silence between Rylan and Elira changed. It was no longer the silence of strangers, but the silence of people who understood each other without many words. Every morning, Rylan went into the dump to gather metal. Every evening, he returned to find Elira waiting. Sometimes she had drawn strange patterns on the dusty floor. Other times she had built small glowing trinkets from broken circuits. The shack that once felt like a cage of rust and wood now felt alive with light. Rylan tried not to care too much, but he could not help himself. When she laughed, the sound was light and pure, so unlike the harsh world outside. He caught himself watching her too long, wondering how something so alien could feel so human. One night, as they sat by the lantern, Rylan spoke of his past. He told her of the war that had taken his family, of how he had survived by scavenging, of how loneliness had become his only companion. Elira listened with wide, silent eyes. When he finished, she whispered, "Alone, no good." Her broken words carried a truth that cut deeper than any blade. She touched his hand gently, her silver skin cool but soft. Rylan did not pull away. For a moment, the old pain in his chest eased, replaced by something warmer. But the outside world was not silent. Rumors spread through the scavenger camps. Soldiers searched harder than before. Patrols questioned more people. Some claimed they had seen strange lights near the dump. Rylan knew suspicion was growing. Merrick's sharp eyes still lingered on him whenever they crossed paths. He could almost feel the man's greed pressing closer. One afternoon, Elira joined him in the dump. She walked carefully, her thin body hidden under an old cloak. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at the endless mountains of broken machines. She picked up a shard of metal and traced her glowing fingers along its edge. It shone like new. "Beautiful," she said softly. Rylan smiled despite his fear. She was learning faster than ever. Her voice still carried an accent, but her words grew clearer each day. Together, they rebuilt a small drone. It hovered shakily, buzzing through the shack. Elira clapped her hands with joy. Rylan laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in years. It felt dangerous to be happy, but he could not stop himself. That night, as the stars glimmered above, Elira sat outside, staring at the sky. Her silver hair glowed faintly in the moonlight. "My people," she whispered. "Up there." Her voice broke with sadness. Rylan stood beside her, unsure what to say. She turned to him. "But here, safe." She placed her hand on her chest, then on his. "Safe. With you." His throat tightened. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that nowhere was safe. But when her eyes met his, he stayed silent. Some truths were stronger than fear. The next evening, danger returned. While Rylan and Elira worked on repairing a broken panel, they heard shouting outside. Floodlights swept across the dump. Soldiers were searching again. Rylan pulled Elira down, pressing her against the wall. His heart thundered in his chest. Voices echoed close. "Search every shack. The alien is near. Command wants proof tonight." Elira clutched his arm, trembling. For the first time, Rylan saw real terror in her glowing eyes. Not just fear of being caught, but fear of losing everything she had found here. The soldiers moved past. Their boots crunched on the scrap. The lights faded, but the silence that followed was heavier than before. When it was safe, Elira whispered, "They come again." Her voice low and certain. Rylan nodded grimly. The bond between them had grown stronger than either expected, but so had the danger, and soon the world outside would test how far that bond could survive. The nights grew restless. Rylan barely slept anymore. Every creak of metal, every whisper of wind made him reach for his rifle. He knew the patrols were closing in. He knew Merrick's greed was sharpening like a knife, but it was not soldiers or scavengers that haunted him most. It was the shadows. One evening, as the sun sank and the dump turned into a maze of black shapes, Rylan noticed movement, a flicker of something darting between the piles of junk. At first he thought it was another scavenger, but the motion was too smooth, too silent. He kept his hand on the rifle as he guided Alira back into the shack. "Stay inside," he whispered. Her silver eyes searched his face. She nodded. Though her hands trembled, hours passed, but the feeling of being watched never left. Even when he shut the door, even when the lantern burned low, the sense of eyes in the dark pressed against him. The next morning, he found strange marks in the dirt outside the shack. Not human footprints, not animal, long, claw-like impressions dragged across the ground. Alira bent low, tracing them with her glowing fingers. Her face went pale. "Hunters," she whispered. Rylan's blood turned cold. "Yours?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "They find me." That night, he laid traps around the shack, old wires, sharp scrap, anything that might slow an intruder. The junkyard felt less like home now and more like a battlefield waiting to ignite. The shadows returned. He saw them slipping through the piles of steel, dark shapes with faint glowing eyes. One moved close enough for him to see clearly. A thin alien form, taller than Alira, armored in fragments of metal. It scanned the ground with inhuman stillness. Rylan raised his rifle, his finger trembling. But before he fired, the figure vanished back into the dark, silent, patient, hunting. Inside, Alira sat by the window, her face pale with fear. "They come for me," she said, her broken voice heavy. "They not stop." Rylan wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but lies felt heavier than truth. Instead, he loaded more rounds into his rifle. His decision was already made. If they came for her, they would face him first. The following day, he caught Merrick lurking near the shack. The scavenger pretended to search for scrap, but his eyes lingered too long on the door. Rylan stepped out, rifle slung casually but ready. "Lose your way, Merrick?" Merrick smirked. "Funny how you've been busy lately. Not much scrap in your hands, but something's keeping you inside that shack." His eyes glimmered with greed. "Secrets don't stay hidden long, friend. You might want to share before others come asking." Rylan's grip on the rifle tightened. "Stay away," he growled. Merrick raised his hands, backing away with a mocking grin, but Rylan knew the man would not stop. That night, the shadows grew bolder. Rylan woke to the sound of metal shifting outside. The traps snapped, sparks flying in the dark. He rushed to the door and saw them, two tall hunters standing in the glow of the moon, their armor fused with junk, their glowing eyes fixed on the shack. One hissed in a voice that scraped the air. The sound made Alira cry out softly from inside. Rylan fired. The rifle's blast echoed across the dump. The figures scattered into the night, their shadows vanishing into the maze of steel. But he knew it was only the beginning. The hunters had found them, and now they would not stop. Alira clung to him, whispering, "They come again." Her silver eyes wide with terror. Rylan held the rifle tight, his own fear hidden behind clenched teeth. The shadows in the junkyard were no longer just watching. They were preparing, waiting for the right moment to strike. The junkyard was no longer silent. It breathed with danger. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound carried weight. Rylan kept his rifle close even when he slept. Alira stayed near him, her silver eyes restless. 3 nights passed after the hunters appeared. Rylan thought they might have left, but in his heart he knew better. Predators never gave up once they caught a scent. The attack began just before dawn. Rylan woke to the sharp crack of metal outside. He rushed to the window. His traps were snapping one after another. Shadows moved fast between the piles of scrap. "Alira, hide," he whispered. She shook her head, fear blazing in her eyes. "No hide," she said. "Fight." Before he could argue, the shack door exploded inward, splinters flying. 2 tall hunters stormed inside. Their armor shone with strange blue lines, their faces hidden under masks of steel. Rylan fired without thinking. The first blast hit one square in the chest, knocking it back against the wall. The second hunter moved faster, swinging a jagged blade of glowing metal. Rylan blocked with his rifle, sparks flying as the weapon bit into steel. Alira cried out, and in that moment her body glowed, Lines of light raced across her skin. Her eyes blazed bright silver. She raised her hand, and the air itself vibrated. The hunter staggered, its blade shaking as if pulled by an unseen force. Rylan slammed the butt of his rifle into its head. The creature fell with a metallic crash. The first hunter rose again, its armor smoking where the shot had struck. It hissed in anger, charging forward. Rylan pulled the trigger, but the rifle clicked empty. The hunter's blade lifted high. Then Alyra screamed. A pulse of silver light exploded from her. The force threw the hunter across the shack, smashing it through the wall and into the scrap outside. Rylan stared in shock. The air still shimmered where her power had burst. Alyra stood trembling, her body glowing faintly. Her voice cracked. "They come more." She was right. From outside came the sound of more footsteps, more hunters. The shack shook as heavy claws tore through the metal walls. Rylan grabbed Alyra's hand. "We have to move," he said. Together they ran out the back, climbing over twisted piles of steel. The dawn light broke across the junkyard, revealing at least half a dozen hunters closing in. The first one leapt, but Rylan rolled aside, firing the last of his rounds. The shot tore through its leg. It fell, screeching. Alyra raised both hands, her glow burning brighter. Shards of scrap metal lifted from the ground and shot forward like knives. 2 hunters fell under the storm, their armor ripped apart, but the power drained her. She stumbled, her light dimming. Rylan caught her before she fell. More hunters were circling. Their voices hissed in unison, calling to each other. They reached the old tower of rusted ship parts at the edge of the dump. Rylan pulled Alyra inside, climbing the narrow stairs. Below, the hunters gathered, their glowing eyes staring up. From above, Rylan aimed his rifle, firing his last shot. The bullet hit the tower's support beams. Metal groaned. Then the whole structure collapsed, crashing down on the hunters. Dust and smoke filled the air. For a moment, silence returned. Rylan coughed, holding Alyra close. She was weak, her glow fading, but alive. "We can't stay," he whispered. "They know where we are now." Alyra looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "More will come." Rylan nodded grimly, staring at the horizon. Beyond the dump, beyond the colony, danger waited everywhere. But leaving was no longer a choice. It was survival. And somewhere in the smoke, one hunter crawled free. Its mask cracked, its glowing eyes locked on the path they had taken. The hunt so that was far from over. The junkyard burned behind them. Smoke rose in heavy black clouds. Rylan did not look back. He carried Alyra through the twisted paths of steel, his lungs burning, his legs heavy. She was weak, her glow fading after the blast of power she had unleashed. Her head rested against his shoulder. Her voice was faint. "They not stop. I know," Rylan muttered. His heart pounded like a drum. He could still hear the distant screeches of the hunters. They were alive. They were coming. By dawn, the 2 had left the scrapyard behind. Ahead lay the empty plains, cracked earth and broken roads that stretched far into the horizon. The colony was behind them. The wilderness was before them. Rylan set Alyra down to rest under the ruins of an old transport ship. He searched their pack, counting what little food and water they had. It was barely enough for a day. Alyra sat quietly, her silver eyes scanning the sky. "They call more," she whispered, pointing upward. Rylan followed her gaze, his stomach twisted. High above, faint shapes moved among the clouds. Not birds, not planes, but ships, dark and predatory. The hunters were not only on the ground, they were in the skies too. They started moving again, keeping low. Rylan led them through the remains of an abandoned highway. Rusted cars lay scattered like bones. Alyra touched one as they passed. Her glowing lines flickered faintly. "Old," she murmured, "like grave." Rylan felt the weight of her words. The world around them was indeed a graveyard. By nightfall they reached a ridge. From there, they saw it. The massive shadow of a warship, floating high above the horizon. Its shape was like a predator, silent but watching. Rylan's chest tightened. He had seen warships before during the old battles, but never this close. Alyra's eyes dimmed. "My people," she whispered, her voice cracked with sorrow. "They want me for war." Rylan turned sharply. "War?" She nodded. "I escape. They use me. Weapon." Her words were broken, but the meaning was clear. She was not just another alien refugee. She was something far more dangerous. Before Rylan could speak, a shrill sound cut through the night. He grabbed her hand, pulling her into the shadows. Drones swept overhead, their red eyes scanning the ground. Beams of light cut across the ruins, searching, hunting. The two ran, hearts pounding. Their steps echoed in the hollow remains of the world. The drones buzzed closer, one beam sweeping across Ryland's back. He dove into an overturned car, pulling Alira with him. The beam passed by, missing them by inches. Alira's breath came fast. She gripped his arm, whispering, "No safe. Anywhere." Ryland pressed his forehead against the cold metal. His jaw clenched. She was right. They could not keep running forever. The hunters were faster, stronger, and they had ships above. The next morning, exhaustion dragged at them both. Their bodies were weak, but their will to survive carried them forward. As they moved through the ruins, Alira stopped suddenly, her eyes wide. "Listen," she said. Ryland froze. The sound reached him too, a distant rumble, not alien, not mechanical, but human. He climbed a rock to see, and there it was, a convoy of human patrol vehicles, moving fast across the plains. His chest tightened. Humans would never protect Alira. If they saw her, they would kill her. But if they stayed here, the hunters would find them first. He climbed down, looking at her, torn between two deadly choices. She searched his face, whispering, "Trust you." The word struck him harder than any weapon. She trusted him, completely. Ryland took her hand. "Then we keep running," he said. Together they turned away from the convoy, slipping back into the ruins. But high above, the warship shifted in the cloud. Its massive shadow spreading across the land. Its engines roared, shaking the ground beneath them. The hunters were tightening their net, and the chase was only beginning. The ruins stretched endless. The land was broken, filled with the skeletons of old cities. Ryland and Alira moved carefully through the hollow streets. Every step carried risk. Every shadow felt alive. They had escaped the hunters again, but not for long. The warship still loomed above the clouds, silent and watchful. Its engines rumbled like distant thunder, reminding them that time was running out. At night, they hid in an abandoned subway tunnel. The air was damp, the walls covered in dust and rust. Alira sat beside the flickering lantern, her face pale from exhaustion. Ryland watched her quietly. His chest tightened whenever he saw how fragile she looked. "You should rest," he said softly. She shook her head, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "No rest. Dream bad." Her broken words trembled. He leaned closer. "Dreams?" She hesitated, then whispered, "They make me weapon. They want me kill, not choose, not free." Her voice cracked, and for the first time since he found her, tears shimmered in her alien eyes. Ryland's throat ached. He wanted to tell her it would be different now, that she was safe with him, but he knew safety was only an illusion. Still, he placed his hand gently over hers. "You are not a weapon," he said. "Not while you're with me." Alira looked at him, her tears catching the lantern light. Slowly, a fragile smile touched her lips. She whispered, "With you, I feel human." The words struck him deeply. He turned away, his heart racing. He was only a scavenger, a man broken by war, and yet, in her eyes, he was something more. Days passed, and the bond between them grew stronger. They shared food, laughter, and silence. Alira tried to cook once, burning the scraps badly, and she laughed until her sides ached. Ryland laughed too, though he knew the sound of joy was dangerous in a world filled with hunters. But danger always found too. One evening, while crossing a ruined bridge, a squad of patrol soldiers appeared. Their headlights cut through the mist, rifles raised. Ryland pulled Alira into cover, but one soldier caught a glimpse of her glowing eyes. "Alien!" the soldier shouted. Shots rang out. Bullets tore into the bridge. Ryland fired back, covering their escape. Together, he and Alira leapt into the river below. The water swallowed them whole, icy and brutal. They crawled out onto the muddy bank far downstream, dripping and exhausted. Alira coughed hard, trembling. Ryland wrapped his jacket around her, pulling her close. His chest heaved, his heart thundered. She looked up at him, her lips pale, her voice barely a whisper. "Ryland, if I die, I want you know." He froze. "Don't say that." But she continued, her eyes locked on his. "I feel more than safe with you. You save me, care for me, fight for me. fall for you." The world seemed to stop. The river roared in the distance, the wind howled, but in that moment, nothing else mattered. Ryland's breath caught. He wanted to deny it, to push her words away, but the truth burned in his chest. He had felt it too, even if he had never spoken it. He touched her face gently, brushing wet strands of silver hair from her eyes. "Aelira," he whispered. His voice shook. "This isn't the time or the place, but I feel it too." Her eyes widened, shining with warmth even in the cold night. She rested her forehead against his, their breaths mingling. For a brief moment, there was no war, no hunters, no death waiting at every turn. There was only them. But the peace shattered quickly. Above the river, lights swept across the sky. Drones buzzed, searching. The warship loomed closer. Ryland pulled her to her feet, gripping her hand tightly. "We have to move," he said. She nodded, her strength returning with his touch. They ran again, but this time, their bond was unspoken, stronger than fear, stronger than death, and both knew their confession had changed everything. The days after the river escape were heavy. Ryland and Aelira kept moving through ruined towns. Their bodies were tired, but their will to survive kept pushing them forward. Every night the warship's shadow loomed in the clouds. Drones searched the land, hunters prowled the ground. But Ryland's greatest fear came not from the skies, it came from people. Humans could be cruel, desperate, and greedy, and he knew someone, somewhere, would trade them for a handful of credits. That fear became real when they reached the outskirts of an old scavenger camp. The place was half abandoned. Fires still burned in barrels. The smell of smoke filled the air. Ryland wanted to pass by quietly, but Aelira was too weak. She needed food, water, and rest. Inside the camp, they found an old trader. The man sold stale bread and dirty water for a high price. Ryland paid without arguing. He only wanted to leave fast, but as they turned, a voice stopped him cold. "Well, well," the voice drawled. "I knew you were hiding something, Ryland." Ryland spun. His blood turned to ice. Merrick stood there, his grin sharp as a blade. His eyes gleamed with greed as they landed on Aelira, her silver skin hidden under a cloak, but not hidden enough. "I told myself, no man spends this long in a junkyard without a secret," Merrick said. "And look at this. An alien girl, right under our noses." Ryland stepped forward, blocking Aelira. "Stay out of this, Merrick," he growled. But Merrick only laughed. "Out of it? No, my friend. I'm right in the middle. Do you know how much the patrols will pay for her? Enough to buy me a whole new life." Aelira's hand gripped Ryland's arm, her voice shaking. "Danger," she whispered. Ryland's rifle was ready, but before he could act, whistles pierced the air. From the edges of the camp, soldiers appeared, their rifles raised, their armor glinting in the firelight. Merrick stepped back, smug. "You see, I already made the call," he said. "You can thank me later if you live." The soldiers closed in. "Step away from the alien," one barked. "Now." Ryland's finger tightened on the trigger. He could fight, but there were too many. Aelira's eyes locked on his, full of fear and sorrow. She shook her head slowly, whispering, "No fight. Not now." Before Ryland could answer, strong hands seized him, knocking the rifle from his grip. He fought, but the soldiers slammed him to the ground. Boots pressed into his back, shackles locked around his wrists. Aelira cried out, trying to reach him, but they dragged her away, her cloak ripped, revealing her silver glow. The soldiers cursed, some stepping back in fear, but their orders were clear. They chained her, her small body trembling. Ryland roared, struggling against the bonds, "Let her go!" His voice echoed across the camp, but no one listened. Merrick smirked down at him. "You should thank me, Ryland. At least you won't die alone. Maybe they'll keep you alive long enough to watch what they do to her." Ryland's rage burned hotter than fire, but he could do nothing. The soldiers hauled him toward a transport cage. Aelira's eyes found his one last time. Her voice cracked. "Ryland, I trust you." Then the doors slammed shut between them. The convoy rolled into the night, carrying them toward the looming shadow of the warship. Its engines thundered in the skies. Ryland clenched his fists. His body was chained, but his resolve was steel. They had taken her, but he swore with every breath left in him, he would get her back, no matter the cost. The warship hung in the sky like a dark god. Its shadow stretched across the land, swallowing everything beneath it. The humans delivered their captives quickly, and once the exchange was done, the great vessel pulled Ryland and Aelira into its iron belly. But fate did not keep them together. The moment they entered, chains were torn from Ryland. He was beaten and thrown into a cell of rust-colored steel. Aelira was dragged away down another corridor. Her glowing eyes locked on his until the doors slammed. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time had no meaning inside the beast of metal. Ryland's body ached, but his anger burned hotter than his pain. He replayed Merrick's betrayal, the soldier's hands, and most of all, Elira's voice, whispering that she trusted him, that trust was a weight heavier than chains. He studied the walls, the guards, the timing of their steps. Every scavenger knew machines, and Ryland knew this ship was a machine like any other. Machines always had weaknesses. One night, when the guards grew careless, Ryland acted. He faked collapse, groaning in pain. When a soldier stepped close, Ryland struck. His chains became weapons, wrapping around the soldier's throat. Another guard rushed in, but Ryland slammed the first into the second, stealing their key. The door hissed open. Ryland slipped into the dark halls. His heart pounded. Every corner hid danger. Every shadow whispered death. Yet he moved with the skill of a scavenger, silent, patient. The warship was a maze. Alien lights pulsed along the walls like veins of fire. Strange symbols glowed on panels, whispering of power he did not understand. He passed cells filled with other prisoners, some human, some alien, all broken. Their eyes followed him, but none spoke. He kept moving, searching for her. Elira's face burned in his mind. He would find her or die trying. At last, he reached a chamber unlike the rest. The walls shimmered with energy, and in the center stood a cage of light. Elira was inside, her body glowing faintly. Straps of energy bound her wrists and ankles. Her head lifted when she saw him, her lips parted in shock. "Ryland," she whispered. He rushed forward, but before he could reach her, a voice filled the chamber, deep and cold. "You dare come here, human?" From the shadows stepped a figure taller than any hunter. Its armor was black steel edged in blue light. Its mask cracked enough to show glowing eyes filled with cruel fire. This was no scout, no raider. This was a commander. Ryland raised the stolen blade he carried, his jaw tight. "Let her go." The commander laughed, the sound like grinding metal. "She is not yours to claim. She belongs to us. She was made to lead our armies, to burn your worlds, and you think you can save her with scraps and courage." Elira struggled against the bonds, her voice shaking. "No, I choose. I not weapon. I not yours." Her glow flickered, trying to break free. The commander turned, his voice sharp. "You are ours by blood and power, and if you resist, then both you and this human will be broken." Ryland's grip tightened, his body trembled, but not with fear, with fury. He had spent his life surviving in the scrap of old wars. He had lost family, friends, and peace, but he would not lose her. With a roar, he charged. The blade clashed with the commander's weapon. Sparks lit the chamber. The walls shook with the force of the strike. Ryland fought with every ounce of strength, each blow driven by Elira's voice calling his name. The commander was stronger, faster. But Ryland had something the alien did not. Desperation. He fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Elira's power surged. Her body glowed brighter. The bonds cracked under her will. Her voice rang through the chamber. "Ryland, together!" The light shattered, blinding the room. Ryland felt a force lift him, burning but alive. And when the glow faded, the commander still stood, his eyes blazing. But so did Ryland. And now Elira was free at his side. The chamber shook with power. Sparks rained from the walls. Smoke curled around broken panels. Ryland stood with the stolen blade in his hands, his breath ragged. Beside him, Elira glowed like a living star, her chains shattered, her eyes burning with silver fire. Across from them, the alien commander rose from the floor, his armor scorched, but his fury unbroken. His voice rumbled like thunder. "You cannot stop destiny. She belongs to us. She is the weapon of our people. She will lead the war against your kind." Ryland tightened his grip. His body was bruised, his strength fading, but his voice was steady. "She's not your weapon. She's not your slave. She chooses her own life." The commander laughed coldly. "And you think she chooses you, human? A scavenger of rust and trash? Pathetic." Elira stepped forward, her glow brighter. Her voice cut the air, broken but clear. "I choose. Not war, not weapon, not you. I choose freedom." Her silver eyes shifted to Ryland, soft and unshaking. "I choose him." The commander roared, lunging with his massive blade. Ryland met him head-on. Sparks burst as steel clashed. Each strike rattled his bones, but he refused to fall. Elira raised her hands, light pouring from her palms. Energy slammed into the commander, driving him back. But the warship itself awakened. Sirens wailed. The walls trembled. Soldiers stormed into the chamber. their weapons raised. Rylan and Elira stood back to back, fighting as one. His blade cut through armored enemies. Her power blasted them into the walls, yet more poured in. The commander's voice echoed, "You cannot escape. The ship is ours. The skies are ours. Even the ground is ours." Rylan's eyes darted upward. The ceiling split open to reveal a massive window. Through it, the stars stretched wide. Beyond them, the planet glowed below, humanity's colonies scatty, red like fragile lights. And above it all, alien fleets gathered. War was already beginning. Elira's body shook with power, her voice strained. "Rylan, if I fight, I burn. If I stay, I destroy all. What do I do?" Rylan's heart clenched. He had no answer. He wanted her safe, but safety was a lie. He wanted her with him, but her destiny stretched far beyond. He cupped her face with his scarred hands, his voice low but fierce. "You're not what they made you. You're not what they want you to be. You're you, and whatever you choose, I stand with you." Her eyes filled with light and tears. She turned toward the commander, raising her hands. "Then I choose," she whispered. The glow exploded outward. Silver energy tore through the chamber. Soldiers screamed. The commander staggered as cracks split his armor. The warship itself groaned, systems failing under her power. Rylan shielded his eyes, his body burning in the brilliance, but he heard her voice even in the chaos, strong and unbroken. "I am not your weapon. I am not your war. I am mine." The commander fell to his knees, his mask shattering, his eyes wide with disbelief. Then the blast consumed him, his body dissolving into nothing. The warship tilted, alarms screaming. Flames erupted as panels burst. Rylan grabbed Elira, pulling her toward the broken window. The planet shone below. "Jump!" he shouted. She nodded, trusting him as always. Together they leapt into the void, wrapped in her light. The warship burned behind them, breaking apart. But above, more alien ships gathered, stretching across the stars. The true war had only begun. They fell together toward the planet, bound not by chains, not by destiny, but by choice, her choice.